In the 1950s, his ambitious kid sister winds up undertaking a search for love and self in a quest to vanquish 3 teenagers.
Somebody write this.
Hi, and welcome to Somebody Write This, where we use a random plot generator to give us an idea and then brainstorm how that could be a thing somebody might want to write. I'm Hannah.
And I'm Jenny, and here to help us with our brainstorming, our guest today is Mary Mascari. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm super excited. And by the way, congrats on 100 episodes. That's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. 100 episodes over 4 years, and somehow we stuck with it this whole time.
That is impressive. That's not nothing.
Yeah. So as we were kind of checking in with you before the show, you mentioned that one of the things that you have real strong opinions about, which is always where we love to start our interviews, is writing groups and critiques. And we've had a couple of conversations about that with guests, but I would love to hear, start us off with your strong opinions and let's get going on this.
Here's my hot take, is that I feel like the way we teach writing, you have a piece, right? And you give it to a bunch of people and they all read it and give you feedback and then you go back, right?
Yeah.
I feel like what that does is that tends to be more discouraging than encouraging. And it tends to lead to sort of a homogenization of stuff, right? Because you're trying to please everyone. I mean, I can't think of any other art form. I mean, okay, so in performance, you'll get feedback of like, this is what I saw, this is how it made me feel, right? But you don't get a bunch of people going, yeah, I don't think you did this right. You know, this isn't correct. You should have, and what ends up happening is that you can't ever do it right? Because people are reading it with the mindset of what's wrong with this. Let me find what's wrong and get it.
Yeah.
And so that trains you to think of writing as find what's wrong. And so you've got to do it right or you'll get not punished, but you'll get corrected.
Yeah.
And I feel that that's just the absolute wrong way to do it. No other, I can't imagine any art form, any other thing you do that you just have randos just sort of telling you how to do it. Like, or even if they're experienced writers, right? Like, even if they're really great, they don't, like, you don't get taught how to do something by someone telling, by anyone just saying, weighing in.
Yeah.
So
the actors in a performance don't get to give notes on the
the director does, and you might like, I was in college, I studied performance, right? So we would give feedback, but it was always couched in the way of, this is what I saw. This is, like literal feedback. Like, here's my experience as an audience member.
So that way the performer says, oh, it made you feel that way. That wasn't what I intended. So what can I do to fix it? That's not like a correction.
Or saying, that's exactly what I wanted. I wanted you to not like that part.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And so you felt much more free, right? Because your work was valid. It was just, here's the effect that's happening. Whereas I feel so often, I've been in so many critique groups, it's always, and the thing is, I've done it too. Like when I was early writing, I would have like, ha, I got you. I bet it, right? Like you get that, right?
Yeah.
And so I feel very strongly that that's just not the right way to teach writing.
Yeah. So have you had opportunities or experiences to kind of bring a new way of looking at it to other writing groups or to your own work? How have you tried to incorporate this?
What I've tried to do is I have some critique partners, and what I'll do is I'll be very specific about what I want from them and what I don't want from them. And sometimes I'll like put a thing in the manuscript and say, okay, at this point, stop reading, tell me this, because my day job is I'm a user researcher, customer researcher.
Ooh, okay.
So I'm kind of using those skills. Because we're testing products and testing experiences and that sort of thing. So I'm bringing those together. So I think, and I think it's important to say, okay, this is a rough draft. Ignore grammar, ignore this. I only want to know, like really specific. Do you understand why this character is doing this? Do you feel like immersed in the environment? Like just really specific questions. And I found that's a lot more helpful.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear as well, like kind of a contrast, like, you've talked about writers' critique groups experiences, but was there a moment when you maybe got some feedback that you're like, I don't think that was helpful because that or where you came away feeling just super discouraged and being like, there's got to be, what kind of motivated you to kind of start looking for a different way to be doing this?
Well, I have a master's degree in writing popular fiction. So
Mm,
obviously the critique group was a large part of it.
yeah.
And I had someone who just didn't like we had critique partners, and I had someone who just didn't get my piece. Like that just
Yeah.
wasn't her kind of thing. And her thing wasn't my kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did not like the thing she was writing because it was not the kind of thing I like to read,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And so I know I found myself being very extra critical because I was just mad that I had to read this thing I didn't like.
Yeah.
And I felt like the stuff
Yeah.
that she was telling which maybe that's
Make it
petty
like
of
what
me.
I want to read. Yeah.
Yeah. And the stuff that she was telling me was like she was like, "Oh, this should be like this," because she was trying to make it like her thing.
Yeah.
And I was just we were both just getting so mad at each other. Um
That just
and
that
it
just
was just
reminds
not
me of like when I was writing poetry as a teenager, and I'd show my mom wanting her to say how good a poem it was, and she'd read it and go, "That's so sad." And I'm like, well, yes, it's about a sad thing. It's fine.
It's supposed to be.
I'm a teenager. I'm
Yeah, yeah.
sad. That's what teenagers
Yes.
are.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Teenagers who write poetry. That there's no other reason for
We
a
write it because
teenager
we're
to write
sad.
poetry.
With all that, I think that's really, really useful and important. And I hope people pick up the second half of that on Patreon, because I think this is, you're absolutely right. We need to be teaching critique a different way and learning how to critique a different way. And so hopefully this will inspire some of our listeners to have kind of a different tactic. With that being said, we're going to create our own little story that y'all can critique however you would like,
Yeah,
or
please
write
do
it and
be
we'll critique it.
Yeah, but please let's use the proper term. Be
Yeah, yeah.
respectful. Be kind.
Yes, in the way in which we put forth. So as a reminder, our plot synopsis is: in the 1950s, his ambitious kid sister winds up undertaking a search for love and self in a quest to vanquish 3 teenagers.
I love this so much.
It's just a wild ride. What is jumping out to you about it, Mary?
I think what's happening is the words 1950s and kid sisters is making me kind of want to set this in sort of like this, suburbs, sort of almost like Stranger Things kind of thing,
Yeah.
where we've got this family, and the kids are running around, doing everything because they're completely unsupervised.
Uh-huh.
And I also like the fact that the so far, the main character
Yeah.
but he's not the one who's doing anything.
He's
His
not
kid
there.
sister's doing
Yeah.
it, right? So
Yeah.
is he trying to help her, right? Is he trying to stop her? Is he jealous that
Mhm.
his kid sister's doing all this cool stuff and she shouldn't do that? Or is she having this whole thing and he's not even sure? Kind of like a Bunnicula thing where she's all crazy and he knows it, no one else believes him, sort of thing. So I really like this.
Yeah. I
Nice.
was wondering if the 3 teenagers were connected to him in some way. If she's his kid sister,
Same,
maybe she's a
same.
child, and maybe, like, in my head, the first thing was that these are his 3 bullies. And she's
Mhm.
like, I'm gonna protect you. And
I love
but
that.
while also undertaking a search for love and self. So I don't know how that connects.
I like that. I like the idea of them being like human teenagers, but maybe also secretly demons or something like that.
Yes.
They're
Right.
like, and
Yeah.
again, like this idea of on the surface, it seems, because that's so 1950s anyway, right? On the
Yes.
surface, it all seems great and shiny and nice,
Uh-huh.
but underneath, it's really dangerous and bad. I was actually just watching this really cool, I guess it's a documentary, this YouTube program, where they're talking about how all these things in post-war England were freaking dangerous in the house. So like,
Mm.
the gas heaters that had carbon monoxide, and then if it was in the bathroom, and if you took a bath, that made it even worse, and like flammable everything.
Yeah.
So I'm like, let's think about that, like that sort of idea of, oh, we're modern and great, but it's bad. So maybe
Yeah.
it's something.
That's why we send our kids outside to play. No.
Yes, please, fresh air, no hard carbon monoxide out here. So yeah, so maybe this guy, and I always have to name the character, so I'm going to name him Jerry.
Yes, let's do it.
Okay, Jerry is like maybe noticing his kid sisters doing weird things, right? Like strange behavior. So he follows her and finds out that she's like going into this other dimension and she's having all these adventures, and he's like trying to protect her.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the sort of dynamic about how initially I was reading it thinking that she is protecting him, but I like the idea that he is also protecting her, and maybe there's like a cyclical where they're
Yeah.
both looking out for each other kind of
Right.
thing.
And the growth arc could be that he realizes that she's completely capable and trusts
Yeah.
her. Because I could see him kind of getting in and messing things up.
Uh-huh.
well, she's like, I got this. And she's like, no, come on, you're my kid sister. You can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm kind of picturing with this, going along with this, is she trying to do the same things that he does and or used to do?
Oh.
Trying to
I
follow
like
in his
that.
footsteps, being ambitious, thinking I can do this, even though, I mean, and maybe she's young. Maybe she's like 6.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I
Maybe.
love little kids, doing great magic things. I love that. Like,
Yeah.
so, and maybe that's something like, we could, just to get deep here, like there's a magic that goes away with adolescence,
Yeah.
right? So when he was little,
Yeah.
he knew about this, right? Like there were these monsters and these things, and they saw it differently. Now that he's older, he sees her going through this, and he's trying to spare her from that.
Mm-hmm.
But
Okay.
this is getting really deep.
Or
Holy
maybe
cow.
even maybe it's even like a little bit of a once you get old enough you can't see the magic kind of thing anymore. So maybe he is now looking back and is like, oh, that was, just my childhood imagination. And she's like, no, for real, these 3
Yeah.
teenagers at your high school are going to cult sacrifice you and or whatever.
Yeah.
and
okay.
and so it's part of that as well, that he's like, he wants to protect her but it's because he thinks she's doing regular dangerous dumb kid things, and so part of it is him having to believe in Santa again, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So here's my question with this. That fits with her search for self. I can do it my own self kind of thing. But what about her search for love? What does that mean in this context?
Yeah.
So I think we got to break up this family, right?
Yeah.
So obviously the love she's going to get is her brother's love, right?
Yeah.
They're going to, because she's a little kid. So maybe the family is messed up, right? Like it's the 50s. Dad's got PTSD from the war.
Yeah.
He's not doing much.
Yeah.
Mom is doing her best, but she's not happy. So they're fighting, but they're not going to divorce, but they're just, so home is no fun.
Yeah.
Which is part of the reason why we'd be a kid sister. She needs a name. Let's see. What's a good 50s name?
Cindy.
Cindy. Ooh, I like it.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yes.
Cindy is, escaping. Like maybe she's going off into the woods or something like that and finding all these things, or going into through a portal, right? So it's maybe a portal fantasy or something. And he, so he's kind of he doesn't want to take care of her. He has to, but he doesn't want to.
So okay, so connected to this, maybe it was even something where I still like the idea that he's like no longer able to see the actual supernatural stuff happening around them. But maybe this was something, maybe she's not quite 6, maybe she's like 10, but this was something that they did together up until this year.
Yeah.
And
until he became a snotty teenager
until he became a snotty teenager, and he's distancing himself from her, and so she's trying to figure out for the longest time, maybe they were really close when mom and dad were going through the worst of it, and now he's like, he moved to a new school, he has new friends, and she's feeling a little lost without her brother. And so she's looking for his love, but also looking for, partly figuring out her own identity. Maybe she didn't have a lot of friends because she was kind of a weird kid. And now that he's kind of left her behind, she is, and so he thinks that her determination to vanquish these 3 teenagers is just her like attempt to play and get his attention. And there's an actual danger going on that she has to contend with.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I also think that one of the 3 teenagers might be a girl that he likes, right? So Jerry's got a thing for this girl, and she, she's pulling him in because she's gonna, they're gonna do something horrible to him.
Yeah, and they're like, no, she's an alligator demon.
Yeah, and it was like, the kid sister's like, no, get her. Now I'm thinking Phineas and Ferb, and how Susie's always like hates Candace.
Yeah.
So it's like that, but good. Susie's, so yeah, Cindy's trying very hard to protect Jerry from this evil teenager as part of it. This either evil girl, and he's like, oh my God, no, you can't do this. I'm, So,
yeah. Okay, so we have a strong start here. So I think I need to get a title now before we get too deep into something and have to rewrite.
Going downhill now.
Yeah, you never. I was like, oh, we have to stop before we get to the whole thing plotted, and then have to change it all. Okay, so our title is one of the better titles that we've had on the show, and that it sounds like an actual plausible story. But also, I think we can do something with it. Our title is The Nile of New Orleans.
Oh my goodness.
Like
Nile of New Orleans.
Like I would read that.
Yeah.
So is this alternate world we're looking at Egyptian?
I can see that, or I can see like the connection between the bayou. We've got crocodiles and alligators.
Yeah.
That they're kind of
Ooh.
together. I mean, New Orleans is so freaking magical, and the Nile is magical too.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
they're both we've got the same sort of river delta thing going
Yeah.
on.
Maybe this is and maybe this adds this other element. Maybe they're new to New Orleans. They lived in this
Okay.
other suburban house. Maybe dad had to go into extended
Okay.
health, like mental health care. And mom moved back to New Orleans to be near her family or something. And
Okay.
so we have this shift all of a sudden. And so the Nile of New Orleans is she falls in love with the bayou, with the swamp, with the rivers, and
all the deep magic that's there.
and all the
Yeah.
deep magic that's there. That is maybe she's also learning about the Nile in school and like
Yeah.
keeps connecting or learning about Egyptian mythology and history and is connecting
Yeah.
it to this. And her brother's like, "This is dumb. What are you doing?"
And so now I think I don't think these characters are white. I think
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
Creole, African American sort of thing.
Yeah.
So that there's going to be
I
that
love
sort
that.
of history too, right? That sort of maybe they're with grandma.
Yeah.
And grandma does
Yeah.
see.
Oh, I like that. They go to stay with grandma.
Yeah. Grandma does see
Yes.
the magic because, old ladies in New Orleans are magical. That's just they are.
Yes.
What is
Yeah.
And so she's kind of helping Cindy, and then and Jerry is trying very hard to not be that because he's a teenager, right? And
Yeah.
he doesn't want to be that sort of swamp. And then like maybe their house is like way out in the swamp, like it's really run down and
Yeah.
Oh my goodness!
So he's very
I
much
like this so much.
he's
I know, me
very
too.
much like struggling with his identity as the new kid, as somebody who doesn't have a lot of money, trying to get in good with these three teenagers, maybe especially who are the popular crowd.
Mhm.
And so she is fighting to take him back. It makes okay, so I'm trying to find the name of this. Okay, so it makes me think of there's a book, and maybe I should save this for the ending, but I think I already know what I'm recommending at the end anyway. But so I'll toss it a secret recommendation in here.
Ooh, bonus.
I recently read in the last year, I read this book called Root Magic by Eden Royce,
Okay.
which is a kid's story set in 1963 in South Carolina with a black family, and let's see, I'm trying to find the synopsis in a way that can remember it. So it's very much about this girl who starts learning about the African American folk magic that has been passed down through her family, and also using that in a way of responding to the stresses of school, especially because they are and school integration is starting to happen, so they're also having to deal with that. And this, our story isn't at that point, but it reminds me of that kind of story where somebody is learning to meld the supernatural mythologies of their folklore and of their history and connecting it to using that to respond to real world stressors.
Oh my God, I love that so much. Yeah,
Yeah.
and okay, so totally reading that, but I think that kind of ties in, right? Because you can totally see that they're coming from this sort of more artificial place, kind of home, which is scary and weird.
Mhm.
Jerry is absolutely rejecting it. Cindy is going all in, but then of course, because of this threat and these teenagers, they have to work together. Now, here's the question: does Jerry end up seeing magic at the end or not? Does he have to just trust his grandma and Cindy?
That is a good
and he's
question.
going blind, or does he
Ooh.
embrace his spiritual self, and with that then be able to see magic?
Ooh, that is a good question. I think my heart is kind of leaning toward he never actually sees it and just has to kind of trust them. Because I think
Yeah.
sometimes that is, sometimes that's how life is that we don't immediately, we have to be able to trust and put our faith in other people. And
Yeah.
because
And
sometimes
I think
they
if he
notice things that we
does-
don't and have instincts that we don't.
Yeah, and I think if he does, that would cement his relationship with his grandma and his sister and really ground him, which is what you want for that character.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, and I can
Right?
see that at the end, the final battle is him supporting Cindy
Mhm.
to fight the three teenagers,
Yeah.
and having to blindly trust her, even things like, okay, step to your left, like there's something there,
Yeah.
there is, it's there, okay, swing now or whatever, she's
Right, or whatever you do, don't touch that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah.
yeah. So she's like telling him what to do. He does it, and they absolutely work together. And that's total bonding. And yeah, oh my God, I love the
like
story.
it
And then
so
you
much.
and you have all this like I'm in all this, I'm really fascinated by the older brother, younger sister dynamic.
I love that.
With him having to rely on her, because absolutely in if you're a teenager, the worst thing you can do is be ordered around by your little sister in front of your friends.
Yeah.
Like, that's humiliating. Or even sometimes to show that you care about your little sister in front of your teenage friends is humiliating.
Oh yeah.
And so there is this absolute level of him having to realize that it's worth it to give up the friendships he thought he had, or the chances that he wants to have of being the popular kid.
And maybe finding out that, no, it's okay. Like, family's important. And, so there could be another friend who's not so, fancy.
Yeah.
For sure.
I mean, and you can bring in stuff like, maybe if he's the new kid, maybe he's making stuff up so that he can, actively denying the past that he has, being like, oh yeah, my dad's off on a mission somewhere or something, like very actively like rejecting the family because it's not going to be what gets him friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But at the end, maybe he could do a thing, he's talking about, okay, here's what my dad did in the war. And
Yeah. Oh,
I want to read this book.
I know.
I will say, more than a lot of the others, this is one that I absolutely want to read, but it's also one that this is not one that I can write. With so much of it being rooted in New Orleans folklore and history. This is not my story to write, but I would love if somebody was inspired by this and wanted to take this and fashion it into something that actually was genuine and authentic to them.
Oh my god, that'd be amazing.
Like, I would, and again, I'll recommend Root Magic again. Like, it's absolutely the kind of thing that I'm getting at. It's such a charming story, and I would love to read more in that vein. And this feels like something in that vein that really deals a little bit. I really love the aspect of brother-sister connections that we get in here, and of male-female connections in here. Like, it's even worse for an older brother to be ordered around by his younger sister in the 50s.
Oh yeah,
like,
and I can totally see
the
that
version of masculinity.
She's got a little dress, and she's got her because they wear uniforms in New Orleans. I don't know if they still do, but like she's got a little outfit. She's got her little pigtails, and she's just absolutely bossy. And his friends just giving him the worst time for it.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, I can see them. I'm so excited about this. Someone write this.
Yes,
do it.
We wrapped that up a little bit faster than we usually do, which is excellent. Let me ask, before we transition to our ending, are there any pieces of this that we haven't really gotten to that we would love to see incorporated in some way?
See, I'm always a big fan of stories with like a billion plot lines.
Yes.
So I'm like, okay, so what else can I do? Oh, maybe the grandma's doing something. Let's see this. What's the mom doing? How is she handling this?
Does that ever come back into the picture?
Yeah, and doing that would make it less, because like right now we've got very much a YA story. If you add the adults in, that kind of changes it around a little bit. Or even the dad, right?
Yeah.
Like even the dad is fighting things and, dealing with his own, background. But yeah.
Like what if because of his PTSD, he can see what Cindy sees?
Oh, maybe there's an aspect where, Or I'm wondering if there's a parallel as well in her connecting to this, to whatever supernatural magical elements she's able to see. If it's tempting in a story with magic to think, well, magic will just solve all our problems.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think you could do some interesting explorations with the fact that maybe she's not going to be able to solve her dad's problems with this.
Oh, yeah.
And that she is partly digging into this because she's like, I will fix everything and everything will be perfect. And Jerry is fully on the other side being like, no, there's nothing we can do. We're just going to have to move ahead and try to pretend that never happened and move on.
Yeah.
So you could have this really interesting exploration of, okay, so what can we actually do with magical options and what is something that we're just going to have to learn to cope with, and something we're just going to have to learn to work through because there's no shortcut.
Yeah.
And this is what I love doing, is like to turn the facet like we're doing. I'm getting a little meta here, but like the way we just did that, where we take a different facet, turn it this way, then you end up getting more depth. And even if we don't ever make that a separate plot line, that's something else you could fold in to the main plot line to add depth. So I just love doing that turning it a little bit. Okay, who else's point of view? Who haven't we considered? And I was like, oh God, why didn't we think of that? That's amazing, so.
Yeah, that's the
This is so
kind of
much
thing
fun.
that even if it wasn't like a full plot line on its own, could be just, this undertone, this
Yeah.
slight undertone that is going to resonate for somebody. That they're
Mhm.
going to be
That's-
like,
yeah.
oh man, I feel that. I want to be able to do that. And why can't she just do this? And it may
Yeah.
not be
Right.
the turning plot point, but it's something that connects.
Mhm.
Right.
Oh,
And I hear it.
I love this.
Yeah.
This is one of the ones that has come together the quickest and most complete in any of our episodes.
That's amazing. I
Or-
think it helps that the prompt kind of held together a little bit. But,
Which I didn't know if it would. So
Yeah, it's
true.
I'm very pleased. Awesome. Well, before we go then, we're going to go ahead and take a moment to recommend stories of our own that we think our listeners should check out. I've already recommended Root Magic twice.
Yep.
But the other one that came to mind, as we're talking about kids defeating monsters, I had the opportunity. This was like one of my most exciting fangirl nerd moments. Is I went to a Comic-Con a couple weeks ago, and I got the chance to meet James Marsters, aka Spike from Buffy.
Oh my
And and he was lovely. He was fantastic.
Aw.
But also I was just remembering and thinking about Buffy as we were talking through this, this teenager who is dealing
Yeah.
with very real trauma of her own. And then at one point having to deal with an ambitious kid sister getting in the way. And so I've, if you haven't seen it, Buffy the Vampire Slayer is a really solid watch. I am a big fan of season 6, which a lot of people really hate, but I think it does a really incredible job of showing how these characters, if left unchecked, if left uncertain where to go and without a lot of guidance, how easy
Yeah.
it is for strengths to become self-destructive moments. And I think we see that super strongly in that season, and it's one of my favorite character development seasons of all time. And so if you haven't watched Buffy, it is absolutely worth the watch.
Absolutely agree.
Oh, it's amazing.
And Spike is my favorite arc throughout the whole thing. Like, I think his
Yeah.
redemption arc is absolutely incredible. So definitely
maybe
worth a
season
watch.
7. If you
Yeah.
if you stop before Steve, if you're like you'll get distracted, that's probably okay.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. I like the Spike arc in season 7, but most of the rest of it is not so much my favorite. But the rest,
Yeah.
but up until season 6 for sure, it is just absolute gold. So if
Yeah.
you haven't seen it, you should. All right, Jenny, what would you like to recommend this week?
I'm going to recommend a movie that I saw. It's called The Storied Life of A.J. Thickery. It's based on a book by, I don't remember who, Gabriel Zevin.
Mm.
And so it's about A.J. Thickery. He has this bookshop on a little island. He has a bookstore, and his wife has died, and his bookstore is going down the drain. And then he had this prized rare edition of a collection of poems by Edgar Allan Poe called Tamerlane, and that gets stolen. And so that's where the movie starts. And then a mysterious package shows up at his bookstore and changes his life completely. And it's one of those just cozy kind of people stories. And I loved it so much. And the cinematography is lovely. It's a little artistic. And it's just a cozy watch. Highly recommend.
Awesome. All right, Mary, you get to recommend something as well. What do you think our listeners should check out if they haven't?
Okay. I actually am going to recommend the live action One Piece that's playing
Ooh.
on Netflix. My youngest child watched the anime, like all of it, and they've been telling me all about it and just absolutely geeking out. And so when it came on, I do nothing. I mean, I only knew like what they'd kind of told me, so I had some
Yeah.
ideas, but we watched it. It is a good time. It's really well done. It's a lot of fun. The actors are way over the top, like they should be. They completely understand the brief that this is
Nice.
supposed to be a big, crazy anime. I love the guy who plays Luffy is delightful. And yeah, we had a really good time. I heard they're doing a second season, and we can't wait. So I would really recommend One Piece, the live action One Piece. It's on Netflix.
Awesome. Before we go, Mary, we want to make sure that you can plug anything of your own that you'd like. So your own projects or social media or website. I don't know, anything you would like to share with our listeners about where they can find you and your work.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing I'm most excited about right now is a new podcast that I wrote and directed and acted. It's a scripted podcast
Ooh.
called
Ooh.
Vennix the Mighty, Vennix. It's a kind of a little Terry Pratchett, little Hello from the Magic Tavern, little Monty Python, about this sort of loser god who falls to the planet, and there's this ditzy priestess who's uh, blindly devoted to him and the trouble that they get in. We got some of the best voice actors in this. Like, just every recording session, I was just cracking up because the actors are so good. We just released the second episode when we were recording this. It was just yesterday when we were recording this, so we'll see how it is. But take a look; it's on all the platforms, and I hope you like it. It's really funny, and like I said, the actors are so good.
Yeah,
Nice.
absolutely. We'll make sure and put a link to that in our show notes so that people can go find it. And I'll have to go look it up and listen to it as well.
Fantastic.
Mary, thank you so much for joining us. This was a really satisfying episode.
This was
Yes,
a
it was.
blast. This is so much fun.
Oh, all right, folks, that is our episode. As a reminder, you can find us every other Thursday wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to join our Patreon for bonus material. Today, we especially want to thank our patron, Katie, for supporting us.
Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at WriteThisPod, or on Facebook /SomebodyWriteThis. And now you can find us on YouTube. And if you've been inspired by this episode and have questions or comments or a bit of story or anything else, email us at somebodywritethis@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you.
We'll be back with another episode in 2 weeks, and we'll see you then.
And as they say, they ate our food and forgot our names.